Depending on how you count, there's either 54 or 58 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado. Many of those 14,000 foot peaks are what some people term walk-ups. But depending on the time of year or the weather, they can still, even the so-called walk-ups, can be quite challenging and quite dangerous. There's 6 14ers in the Elk Range in this area, with the Maroon Bells, Pyramid Peak, Capitol, and to a lesser degree on Castle Peak, Conundrum. I recommend hiring a guide. I started guiding here in 1986-87 with Elk Mountain Guides. It was owned by Judy Botanovich. Judy, in 91, 92, something like that, sold the company to Blazing Adventures. Blazing Adventures did not keep it going as the type of guide service that Judy had, where we were doing rock climbing, avalanche courses, mountaineering. They mainly wanted to service days to expand their existing business of Jeep tours, picnic hikes, that sort of thing. At that time then, I was not guiding, started looking at NOLS, did a program with NOLS in 92, and then in 93 and 94, I guided with Aspen Expeditions, and it was owned by Dick Jackson. I worked 2 years, just a little bit of guiding on the 14ers, a little bit of top rope rock climbing, and Dick was really looking for guides that had a little bit more skill in rock climbing than I did, and a little bit better understanding of alpine mountaineering. Also, Aspen Expeditions at that time did not have very much winter work. It was almost zero. They did a little bit of ice climbing, a little bit of hut trips at the Braun Hut. So in 1995, I switched over to Aspen Alpine Guides, and it was owned by Scott Messina. I really hit it off with Scott. We became friends. I really liked Scott's attention to risk management, his structure, his organization. He had a small guiding service and very detail oriented, and really was client oriented. It was a great relationship, and I learned a lot from Scott. Then in 2006, I purchased the company with Tim Shortell and Josh Gross. And I was a majority owner until 2012, and then I sold it. Back to guiding, one of the things I missed out on, and I realize it now, and that was the certification process with the American Mountain Guides Association. When I took over Aspen Alpine Guides, at that time we were still looking for guides that had NOLS experience, outward bound experience, and also they were just good with clients and had really good client care. Well, that was great, but the American Mountain Guides Association, their first certification that they did in this country was 1993, and they kept exploring what they were doing and how they were doing it. And then in between 2005, 2010, they really did well at marketing, branding, the certification process, and it made complete sense to me. It's the same concept of continuing education for your doctor. I don't want to go to my urologist if they've only stopped their learning when they were 25, 28 years old. and now they're 40, in their 40s or 50s. They do continuing education. There's new techniques, new ways of doing things. And that's what the American Mountain Guides Association is all about. I know some young guides and older guides get a little peeved at the concept of the American Mountain Guides Association and the certification process. I don't. It's really needed. It creates a safer system. And one of the things I missed out on too, and actually at the time, one of the office people of Aspen Expeditions, we had a long conversation in 2006, and we were using ropes for doing the local 14ers, but not all the time. At times we were spotting clients, that sort of thing. And the realization was, and my realization was, that's quite dangerous. And we had to learn short roping techniques, which we did. And that's one of the things that the American Mountain Guides Association, their alpine mountaineering, they teach, they go over, and that's short roping techniques. And it's really needed on the Bells, it's really needed on Pyramid and Capitol. Sometimes the public doesn't understand short roping, and the concept to them is, well, if the client falls, there's a possibility he's going to pull the guide off and they'll both fall to their death. That is a misconception. And what I mean by that, if someone knows and experience and they've learned short roping techniques, they know that when the guide, when they get to a 5th class small pitch, they'll climb that up, set a good anchor. It could be belaying them with a body belay or on their ATC, and they'll bring the client up. If they're doing something like the knife edge on Capitol, they're using the rope around terrain features to create a belay if the client falls. And in some sections, and depending on the client, they may set an anchor for the entire knife edge traverse. It's all client dependent, how everybody's moving, etc. And it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of judgment to learn to do that. So where I'm going, if you are climbing these 14ers around here, hire a guide. And Aspen Expeditions is a wonderful guide service. I think it's Mike Brett and I know Amos. They bought the guide service a few years ago from Dick, and they're running it. They also bought Aspen Alpine Guides. So there's only one guide service, Aspen Expedition. But that's not to take anything away from Aspen Expeditions. And yes, I know I sound like it's advertising for Aspen Expedition, and in a sense I am. I'm advertising for safety, and they are promoting and they promote safety. I've also worked with some of their guides. They worked with Aspen Alpine Guides. Nate Rowland is a wonderful guide. He's an all-around mountain guide. He's been on mountain rescue for over a decade now, I think, and he's just so experienced on safety, how to manage and handle a rescue. And that's the type of guide that you want. Art Burrows works for him now. I know quite a few of the others, like Simi Hamilton, who's one of the fittest humans on earth. So they have a good pool of guides, and of course Amos himself. But that's my little soapbox, my little take on guiding, certifications, and even Knowles now is looking at certification process. This isn't, I'm not saying something before rollout or anything like that. They're looking at it, and they have been for off and on for a number of years. And that's about it. This is probably a separate video than the one of just doing this day hike up to Montezuma Basin, but I think it's an important one.